at a certain point, right, to get into the Q&A period?
Yeah, so I thought we agreed that we would do the presentation and then have at the end do the Q&A.
Yes, but I think I think you're right about that, but I think we agreed that we were going to pick a time to absolutely stop by so that folks knew that at that time they would have their Q&A period.
Yeah, I was mentioning that there would be like 15 minutes, so 5:45.
Okay, so that's so I couldn't remember if it was 5:40 or 5:45. At 5:45,
I think that will be done by 5:40, but I think that 5:45.
I think so too.
Okay, so if we get to 5:45 and we're not done yet, I will call time so that people know. And I think it'd be helpful too to let people know, Shauna, at the beginning that we will absolutely stop by 5:45 so that people can ask questions.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Ryan Towns
should be feeding our child soon. I don't know why he's here.
Hope somebody feeds mine.
Oh, they're old enough.
Right, that's absolutely true. It's another self-sufficiency night, kids.
So I'm going to share my screen just to make sure we don't have any issues. There. Looking all right?
Yep, looks good.
And I'll probably give people till like 5 after, Sally, to kind of join. Do you think, or?
I don't know that I'd wait that long. I think for those, I think they would expect to start at least within the first 2 minutes. I would go ahead and launch.
Okay, sounds good. I wasn't sure if people are always, if they think, I think sometimes Zoom can be a little confusing. So
yeah,
by now I've gotten the hang of it, and most people kind of have. At the beginning there, it seems like 5 minutes after the meeting started, people would finally be logging on or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I just realized, is Jaden on for reporting purposes?
What did you say?
That's it. I just noticed that Jaden is here for reporting purposes, I'm assuming. I don't know if he can hear me or not. I'm a big fan. I'm a Mommy Valley mom, Jaden.
Well, it's 5 o'clock now, Sally, so we'll just give them like a couple more minutes for anybody who's running a little bit behind. But thanks for everybody who's logged in so far. Looks like a good turnout. Fine. So it's 5:02 now. And I think that kind of seems like we haven't had anyone log in recently. So I think we could probably get started. Just want to thank everybody for joining us. We're really excited to be here and excited to share the Detwiler Park Restoration Project with you. First off, this meeting is going to be recorded just so we can make sure that we've got all of our questions answered. If there's anything that we need to kind of go back and answer afterwards, we can have those questions recorded. So I'm going to press record now, if that's all right. Hopefully. Oh no, it won't let me record. It says I'm not the host. I don't know if Alex, if maybe you logged in before me, if maybe you could record.
It also says I am not the host.
Oh, strange. Okay, well, maybe this meeting won't be recorded. We'll just have to take really good notes on the questions. Sorry about that. I've recorded them in the past.
Hi. Hello. I'm trying to get in through Zoom, and the linkage is not working. I've called in. I'm calling in.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, the link's not working?
It is not working. This is Peter from California calling in.
Hi, Peter. Thanks for joining us. I'm sorry about that the link doesn't seem to be working for you.
Yes. It's the https://Toledo Ohio Gov Zoom US /J/86412690025. Is that the? Yeah.
Huh. Strange.
Okay. Maybe that's why people aren't joining.
Okay. It looks like we have a few other people here. So hopefully we haven't had too many issues like that. Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah, I guess so yeah, I think we'll just get started then. Unless Regina, do you want to maybe try to record it? Maybe it's your name?
That is what I was trying to do.
Okay.
I was trying to look at that and see if I can record. And it says, please ask the host to give permissions to record.
That's so strange. Okay. Sorry.
Okay, and I'll keep trying. I'm going to try another way. Which is
Okay. I'm sorry about that, everyone. And yeah, thank you for calling in. If you guys had problems with the link, I really apologize.
Okay.
But to get started with the meeting, I was hoping to introduce our grant team for this project. My name's Shauna Towns. I work for the City of Toledo. I'm the Stormwater Coordinator with the Division of Environmental Services. I'm working as the project manager on this grant, and I'm really excited about it. And I guess I'll pass it over to Regina if she wants to introduce herself.
Oh, sorry. Hi, my name, well, let me give you my face. I'm sorry, I was busy trying to figure out how to record. My name is Regina Collins, and I work with the City of Toledo and also with Environmental Services. I work directly with Shauna. She's the project manager on this for this grant. And I think that's it.
All right. And Sally, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. President and principal at the Mannequin Smith Group. Mannequin Smith Group is happy to be working in close collaboration with the City of Toledo, having helped prepare the grant application that's funding this project, and now in the design phase of the project. I'll be doing my best to keep an eye on the chat tonight. So if you want to put questions as we go into the chat, we can save those for the Q&A period at the end.
Great, thanks, Sally. And then Matt from Mannequin Smith joined us from on the phone. Matt, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, and I apologize. I ended up with a schedule conflict and traveling this evening, so I am joining via telephone. But I'm a senior project manager and associate with Mannequin Smith Group, and I'm serving as the project manager on our side for the project, and very excited to be working on it.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. And then Alex.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm Alex Peters. I'm a natural resources scientist and ecological designer with Mannequin Smith Group, and I am the technical lead on the project.
Awesome. Thank you. So I think that's our grant team. And just to let everybody know, this meeting is scheduled for an hour. Out of respect for everyone's time, we are going to finish promptly at 6 p.m. The presentation will end at latest at 5:45, so we'll have at least 15 minutes for Q&A. And I will start the presentation and go over the agenda with you now. Stop sharing my screen though, in case my audio gets a little weird. Okay, so this evening, I'm going to be talking about the site background and history with you all and the project funding. And then I'll hand it over to Alex and she'll go over the project design and the project schedule. And then as I mentioned, we'll have at least 15, probably 20 minutes at the end for your questions, which will be moderated by Sally. Yeah, feel free to put your questions in the chat box anytime during the presentation, but we're going to be saving the questions for the end to kind of answer them all together. So yeah, we'll get started. So the Detwiler Park project was funded by the US EPA, and the funding is being administered by Ohio EPA. They have subawarded the grant funds to the city of Toledo, who is the project lead and is managing the project. The city of Toledo has contracted Mannequin and Smith Group to be our lead consultants, and they'll be preparing the project design plans and helping oversee the construction. So a little bit about the site. The project site is located at Detwiler Park. Some of you may be familiar. It is a city-owned park located in North Toledo. The site is found just south of Detwiler Park Golf Course and is 3/4 of a mile inland of Maumee Bay. The project site contains Detwiler Marsh, which is a 24-acre emergent marsh, and 2 streams, Detwiler Ditch and Mud Creek. Outside of the site, Detwiler Ditch flows north through Detwiler Park Golf Course to North Summit Street, where a pump station pumps the water from the ditch into the Maumee Bay in Lake Erie. You may be able to see from the aerial map here, the wetland is diked. It was designed to receive water from Mud Creek, which flows from west to east along the northern boundary of the wetland. Lower flows in Mud Creek have resulted in lower water levels in Detwiler Marsh. These lower water levels have resulted in invasive species to take over the wetland. The marsh has an outlet to Detwiler Ditch, which flows along the eastern boundary of the wetland. Several swales on the eastern side of the channel connect the ditch to the existing floodplain wetlands. The portion of Mud Creek that is near its convergence with Detwiler Ditch is currently experiencing a moderate amount of erosion and incision due to physical constraints on the stream channel by historical fill to the north and by high banks to the south. And that's what these photos to the left are, photos of Mud Creek where you can see this area where it is incised and experiencing some erosion issues. So this video here is drone footage taken of the site in July of 2020. As you can see, the wetland has some deeper pools, but the majority of the marsh is dominated by invasive Phragmite and reed canary grass. This site is situated in the lower reaches of the Detwiler Ditch frontal Lake Erie sub-watershed, which is a highly urbanized area north of the Maumee River. Water flows into the site in the form of stormwater from the surrounding neighborhoods. Toledo Edison, or First Energy, owns the land between Detwiler Marsh and Mud Creek. You can see an overhead utility line there. Our work will not be taking place on their property, however. So Detwiler Marsh is a former Ohio Department of Transportation, or ODOT, mitigation wetland, originally constructed in 1995. After a 10-year mitigation monitoring period, the site was then turned over to the city of Toledo. The site is located in a highly developed area near residential and commercial zones, but it is also uniquely placed between two nearby completed restoration projects. One is Manhattan Marsh, which opened to the public as a new metro park last year, and the other is Collin Park, which was a wetland and vernal pool project constructed in 2015. The project is also located near Collin Bay and the Grassy Island Coastal Wetland Restoration Projects. These were funded through the H2 Ohio program, and they're both currently in the design phase. So the goals that came out of the concept designing and planning for this project include helping to improve aquatic habitat in Detwiler Ditch and Mud Creek, working to restore the health and the fish of the macroinvertebrate communities, and increasing the biodiversity at the site. Of course, we would like to improve water quality and reduce sedimentation and increase the connection of Detwiler Marsh to their surrounding natural environment. And in order to achieve these goals, the objectives of this project are to reestablish Detwiler Marsh as a functioning wetland, restore the floodplain areas along both streams, improve the hydrological connection between the streams and the floodplain wetlands, and use natural channel design techniques to restore the stream channel. We also would like to use the project and the site as an educational opportunity to offer the public more knowledge and information on the importance of wetlands and natural habitats such as these marshland areas. The concept plan created for this project was used for the basis of a Section 319 grant in 2019. The grant funding included a match requirement. Much was funded through the City of Toledo. A portion of that match did come from in-kind services from the City of Toledo personnel and from our community partners. It was later brought to our attention that Ohio EPA had additional funding available through the Section 319 program and may be interested in adding restoration work at the site. So the city worked with Mannequin and Smith Group to apply for additional funding and to expand on the restoration practices that would be implemented at the project location. We actually received approval for that funding just earlier this year. So the City of Toledo is really lucky to have some great community partners assisting us with the public education and outreach portion of this project. Our partners organizations include Partners for Clean Streams, Lucas Soil Water Conservation District, Toledo-Lucas County Rain Garden Initiative, the Toledo-Lucas County Sustainability Commission, the Toledo Metropolitan Area Council of Governments, Toledo Public Schools, Visions of Collin Park Committee, and the Toledo Metro Parks. The education and outreach plan for this project consists of hosting 3 public meetings, this being one of them. This is the initial public meeting where we're hoping to engage residents and make everyone aware of the project and the anticipated construction timeline and project outcomes. We will also be holding a second public meeting held during construction to give residents and interested members of the public an update on the status of the project and the construction. And then once the project is completed, we will also host another post-construction meeting, which will hopefully be done in an open house and site tour format at the project site, so the public can see the site once done. We will also have signage at the site and be issuing fact sheets on the project metrics and outcomes. The city and our partners will help promote these public events through our websites and social media outlets, as well as meetings and committee updates. And we'll be passing along information and facts about the project as we go along. We're hoping the site can serve as an outdoor classroom for Toledo Public School students in the future. We really feel the project will serve as a great example to the importance and of wetlands and native plants and habitat restoration, and hopefully can do so into the future. I'll now hand it over to Alex to go over some more about the site design and the project schedule. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Shauna. So, I'm going to go over a little bit more about the specifics of the design. And before we talk more about the design, I also wanted to mention that quite a bit of site characterization has already occurred on the site. So this was mostly in last year after the grant was awarded. We got a lot of this work done. So that included a site survey, including the drone survey that you saw the video from earlier. We did a soil survey. Part of that was to identify some areas of historical fill material that we were aware of on the site, but this gave us a better idea of where those areas were. And then also to give us a better characterization of the types of wetland soils that exist in the marshes and the floodplain. We also developed a water budget. This was really important in telling us kind of what is potential restoration strategies we could employ for the wetland areas. Hydrology is a huge influencer on the type of wetland habitat that exists on the site. So that was really important in telling us, what kind of wetland plants we could be supporting on the site. We also did a wetland delineation of the existing wetlands on the site. That's on the right-hand side. You can see, obviously, the diked marsh area is almost entirely wetland. And then there's also a few wetland areas east of Detwiler Ditch within the floodplain. And then we also performed an invasive species inventory and a management plan, which I guess I'll talk about now. If Shauna, you want to go on to the next slide. So invasive species are one of our biggest challenges at this site. Shauna mentioned, excuse me, that the inside of the dike is almost entirely Phragmites and reed canary grass. There's also quite a few invasive species within the wooded areas adjacent to the dike and in the floodplain. So there's about 9 different species that we identified within the site that are considered invasive by the Ohio Invasive Plant Council. And as part of that, we mapped them. You can see that on the right. And we also developed an invasive species management plan. So the initial treatment of these species will be occurring early this summer, and then throughout the summer into early fall. And then we'll do the construction, and then there'll be follow-up treatments as needed to continue to manage them. Next slide. So Shauna kind of went over some of the goals and objectives that we were created outside that came out of the concept planning portion of the project. And these are some of the more broad goals that we used to kind of guide the full design of the wetland restoration. So these are just kind of to steer us in the right direction as we're developing the design. I also want to point out, so here on the right is the existing conditions and the survey of the site. Obviously, it's a little small, so you're not going to be able to read it, unfortunately, but you can see from that figure that we'll be accessing the site for construction from the south end of Englebrook Court. So the city of Toledo owns 2 parcels on the south end of that cul-de-sac that will be used as a staging area for the equipment. We aren't, one of the things that became important early on in the design process was we wanted to balance cut and fill on the site. So we don't want to be importing a lot of material into the site, and we also don't want to be exporting a lot of material because, well, there's a big environmental impact associated with that, and it's also quite costly. So we're pretty much using all the materials that are existing on the site. And what that means for construction is the construction equipment will be mobilized to our staging area. And then, but there won't be continual construction traffic necessarily along Englebrook. That will not be occurring throughout the project because we won't be shipping materials in. So pretty much you'll see construction traffic at the beginning of the project when they mobilize the equipment. And then you'll probably see some traffic a little bit when planting starts so we can get the plant material out to the site. But otherwise, all the quote unquote traffic will be within the marsh area. Yeah, let's go on to the next slide. And of course, if you guys have any questions throughout this, feel free to put your questions in the chat and we'll come back to them at the end. So this is kind of the vision of what we want the project to look like once it's complete. On the left side is the grading plan. We put this on here so you can kind of see that we'll be moving some of the dirt around within the marsh. So what we're going to be doing is deepening a lot of these pool areas and also enlarging them. So there's more deeper areas, more surface water. We'll also be connecting or enhancing the connection between those pools. And then we'll be moving all that dirt around to create some higher areas, some lower areas to really create a diversity, more variation in the elevation of the soil surface throughout the marsh. And what this does is it provides us more variety for different water levels. And that means that we can plant a large diversity of different wetland plants that are better adapted. Some are adapted to deep water, some only like their feet wet. So this gives us more room and flexibility to plant a greater diversity of plants. Along Mud Creek to the north of the marsh will be on the east side of Mud Creek, where the mouse is right now, if you can see the cursor, we'll be pulling the southern bank back and putting in a wetland bench. This is kind of similar to a two-stage ditch configuration, if anyone's familiar with that concept. But if you're not, what it means is we're going to be enhancing or increasing the channel width, putting in more of a wetland plants within the channel. That's going to increase the capacity of the stream, and it's also going to create more habitat within the stream itself. We're also going to be changing we're going to be, I'm trying to figure out how to say this. Well, we're going to be introducing sinuosity to the channel, which is pretty much a fancy way of saying that we're going to be making it bend more naturally. Right now, the channel's very straight and narrow because it was constructed as a ditch to drain water. But now what we want to do is we want to increase, we want to make it more of a natural channel, increase the habitat, and doing so, what we'll be doing is moving the channel around, making it a bit more wiggly, I guess you could say. Yeah, if you want to go on to the next slide, Shada, that'd be great. These are some cross sections through the project site, give you an idea of kind of how we're going to be getting these different habitats in here. So the marsh, we're going to be having a gradient of about 6 feet from the highest point to the lowest point in the marsh. So that will give us a good depth of water but obviously the water fluctuates seasonally. So, some parts of the year it will be drier and some parts it will be wetter, but maximum in the deepest pool will have a maximum of 6 feet of water, but most of the areas will be much, much shallower. And then on those higher areas, that's where we will be planting more of the trees and the shrubs. They generally can't, they're not adapted to very deep water. So that's why we have some of those higher areas for those species. And then that bottom cross section, I apologize, it's hard to read, but hopefully at least it'll give you an idea. That's what we're doing along the stream, where we're taking that, you can see we're pretty much widening the channel in certain areas and planting wetland plants along there that will increase some of the habitat. Next slide, please. Plants. This is the fun part where we get to pretty much play around and really make this project have really high habitat value. So right now it's all emergent invasive species, so like Phragmites and reed canary grass. So we're pretty much going to be starting over from square one almost for the plant community. There's a few areas of existing native plants within the marsh that we are going to be protecting. And then we'll also just be enhancing with new plantings. So we're going to be planting 4 different seed mixes. And in total, here I need to pull up, I have some numbers for you guys. I mentioned earlier that different types of plants are better adapted to different types of water levels. So because we're going to be creating this diversity of water levels in the marsh, we're going to be able to plant over 80 different native species within the marsh. And that's going to be 16 different tree species, 11 shrubs, 27 different species of what will be planted as plugs. So like leafy herbaceous material. And then we'll have 47 different species that will be planted within the seed mixes. And shown here are a few of the species that we considered during the concept planning. There are a few that we will no longer be planting because we don't think they're best suited to the site, but almost all of these will be planted within the project area. And if you have any questions about the plant material, I'd be happy to talk more about that. Next slide. So as a part of the grant, we have to meet certain metrics, and that's that bulleted list. So this is what the grant will be achieving. We'll be removing 36 acres of invasive species. We'll be installing 750 feet of that stream channel that I mentioned before with the wetland bench area. We'll also be restoring an additional 1,200 feet of channel by improving the bends in the channel, making it less straight, planting the banks of it with native plants. We'll have 24 acres of wetland restoration. Almost all of that is within the diked marsh area. And then we also have 16 acres of riparian plantings. That's pretty much means plantings along Mud Creek and along Detwiler Ditch. And as a result of the project, we're estimating these load reductions. So this would be pounds per year of nutrients or tons per year of sediment that would be going into Lake Erie, but that we are estimating that will no longer be entering the lake because of the improvements that we'll be making at this site from this project. And the goal of all this project, beyond the load reductions that you see there, is really to enhance the habitat and promote habitat for the myriad of birds, reptiles, amphibians, insects that all use this site, but really depend on wetland habitat in the area of largely urban area that doesn't generally have that type of habitat available to them. Next slide. This is the project schedule. It's pretty much been 4 years in the making. So concept planning really started in 2018. And as Shauna mentioned, the city applied for the 319 grant in spring of 2019, and it was awarded in the fall of 2019. A lot of the initial site work was done last year to get, the existing conditions of the site. And then we're currently still designing or still finalizing the design of the site. That will be finalized shortly this spring. And then construction will begin this summer. We, depending on the conditions for construction, we may be planting both this summer and fall, and potentially planting into the spring of next year. It really depends on the weather that we get and all those sorts of stuff. But construction will definitely be ending in the spring and summer of next year. The grant period itself ends in September of 2022. Next slide. And that's all the material that we have for you, but we are definitely going to open it up for questions now. So if you have any questions or comments, please type them into the chat, which Sally will be looking at. But otherwise, thank you all for joining us this evening and listening in for this project. And we're really excited for it. And if you have any questions that you think of maybe later, feel free to reach out to us. Shauna's contact information is right there. And then with that, I think I'll go over to Sally's to moderate our Q&A portion.
Thank you, Alex. So far, there's one question in the chat, and that comes from Andrew Sankowski. Any plans for monitoring the site to evaluate nutrient removal effectiveness post-construction?
No, we don't have any plans right now to do any monitoring for the actual effectiveness of the nutrient removal. Of course, we'll be monitoring it for, how the plants are taking off and if invasive species are coming back and things like that. But we don't have any plans to do sampling and things like that right now.
And I guess to piggyback on that, it's not part of the grant project, as in it's not a grant requirement of the project to do long-term monitoring of nutrient reduction. However, that's also potentially something that maybe we could do in the future as some sort of partnership or continued like involvement, public engagement as part of the project potentially.
And to put a finer point on that, not only is it the grant does not cover that, it's not an eligible expense under the grant. Typically, any post-construction monitoring that's conducted in the Section 319 program is conducted by Ohio EPA. I'll move on to other questions. Paul Jasek asks, how will the city maintain Detwiler Ditch long-term? For example, many special wetland plants planted at Cullen Park vernal pools are no longer growing about 5 years after project completion. The pools are filled and surrounded with invasive plants. Frogs have disappeared from Cullen Park pools. Lessons learned from this project from the 1995 MSG Detwiler Marsh design. That's actually not 1995, but Detwiler Marsh design that applied to the future of Detwiler Marsh and also applied to existing and new Cullen Park area wetland projects. Does the water, I'm sorry, it goes on. Does the water pump from Mud Creek to the marsh currently work? So it's a two-parter.
I can handle part one. I'll take the stab at part one right now. Well, the city currently we have a new management. So it's a new management plan. So we have long-term maintenance of all of our stormwater control measures or best management practices, which is what this would fall under. So we have an extensive plan to manage that and manage the invasives. So we've taken a different approach to management through some of our lessons learned over the years. I know that you mentioned Cullen Park. Cullen Park is also one of the sites that we are monitoring, and that we're taking care of the invasives and making sure that the plants, if they're gone, that they've been reestablished. So we have a new approach to this as a city, and we have a long-term management plan to make sure that all of these plantings and all of these areas that we put in with grant funding and with some of our own funding are maintained.
And just to add a little note on that, that is kind of recently, in the last couple of years, we've tried to really undertake and up our maintenance and make sure that these things are all in a plan comprehensively. We know, have an idea of what needs to be done, where and when. So we're hoping that in the future we can do a little bit of a better job.
I can take on Paul's other two questions, because both of those really are about the hydrology of the site. So the question about the 1995 design, you're right, that is 1995. You're talking about when the marsh was first designed as an ODOT mitigation project, I'm assuming. And that was designed with water being pumped from Mud Creek into the marsh as a main input of water. However, over the years, Mud Creek has become more intermittent in flow regime, meaning that water does not flow through Mud Creek all the time. It's very seasonal flow through that stream. So we're not getting the same amount of flow as we were before. And the pump is no longer pumping water from Mud Creek into Detwiler Marsh. So our water input is just much lower than when it was first designed. So it was first designed to hold, well, it still is able to hold the same amount of water, but it was first designed with a certain water level in mind, which is no longer being input into the marsh. So as part of this current design project, I didn't really get into this because I didn't want to get too technical here. So we can talk about this more later if you want. But what we did do a water budget, as I mentioned, for this project, because that was one of our main concerns, is how are we getting the amount of hydrology that we need in order to prevent future invasion from invasive species. And so that is definitely one of the considerations we're taking as we go through the design development, and is one of our biggest challenges beyond the invasive species problem. So we are designing with that in mind. That's why we are putting in more woody species in addition to the emergent and submergent aquatic species that we are going to be introducing. And I guess I'm going to leave it at that for now, but we can definitely talk more on that if you're interested in the future.
Thanks, Alex. The next question is from Peter Hess. Starts with a comment, nice presentation. What is the annual cost of maintenance? What entity will be responsible for maintenance? So similar to the prior question.
The city of Toledo will be responsible for the maintenance. We don't know the exact annual cost right now. We'll probably, discuss that with our consultants and also kind of look at the cost of some of our other sites and try to determine an estimated cost. But we don't have that number currently.
And Paul Jasek asks, will Detwiler ditch water continue to flow outside of Detwiler Marsh? There seems to be a lot of water flow from Manhattan Marsh.
Yes, unfortunately. So that's one of the things we looked at first in the concept planning is there any way to get the water to flow through from Detwiler Ditch into Detwiler Marsh. However, the elevation of the ditch is much lower than the elevation of the marsh. So the ditch is a lower elevation. So unless we were to pump from Detwiler Ditch into the marsh, we would not be able to get water flowing uphill into the marsh. And there's been a desire not to pump water constantly from the ditch as a type of like sustainability measure. We don't want to be constantly pumping water into the ditch when there's other ways we can be improving the habitat without that direct intervention. So more of a passive a type of design strategy, I guess you could say.
Okay, that completes the questions that are currently in the chat. For those who may not be able to type a question into the chat because you're in transit or calling in on the phone, please feel free to weigh in with your question verbally. In the meantime, I'm going to read a question that just came in from Joyce Edginger. Why did you skip my questions? I know I am as knowledgeable as the two gentlemen, but I am a lifelong resident. I am very sorry. That was not intentional. Let me go back and, oh gosh, I'm so sorry. Here's one of them. Will the golf course be reduced? Let me go. That's a question for the city of Toledo. Will the golf course be reduced? That's
the property.
it's unrelated to this project, so I can assure you the golf course is not going to be reduced by this project. That's entirely outside of the scope of this project.
Yeah, this project will not be impacting the golf course.
And Joyce, I'm sorry to have missed both of your questions. I just found the other one. Thank you for pointing that out to me. What impact will this have on Detwiler Park?
Well, it will improve the marsh area a lot, but I don't think it will affect the recreation area or the golf course.
It wouldn't, I would say maybe would increase our habitat diversity.
Yes.
What we're doing with this project.
So the natural area of the park, I think, would be greatly improved, but the baseball fields and the golf course and that portion of the park will not be affected. Baseball diamond, sorry.
There's a comment from Paul Jasek that says bird sighting records on ebird.org from 10 years ago showed Detwiler Marsh was a wonderful place. Glad to see this project making it nice again there. And then he adds a web address to ebird.org/hotspot/L2055431. Thank you for that, Paul. I'm going to go back and make
I
sure
just
that
want a quick comment there because I am also a birder, and that was one of the first things that I checked when I was doing the concept planning. And I'm really hoping that this project will be a big improvement to the habitat available to different waterfowl and also just migratory birds coming through.
Okay, and this is a question from Sanger Library. What about the retiree golf course?
Yeah, this will not have any impact on the Detwiler golf course. It abuts it, but will not impact it.
And then Paul Jasek asks, what public access improvements will there be? Will it be in the form of a path and tiny bridge crossing Detwiler Ditch?
Originally, that was our hope, but it wasn't funded through this funding. We're hoping to find some funding, but the dike is walkable. So right now we're going to use that as a path. And in the future, we hope to find a source to build a bridge and maybe a boardwalk and things like that to make it even more accessible.
Okay, and Joyce asks, there's an old swimming pool building that needs to be removed by the city of Toledo to improve the site. So a comment, not a question. An old swimming pool built, I'm sorry, let me make sure I read that accurately. There's an old swimming pool building that needs to be removed by the city of Toledo to improve the site.
We will make note of that. This is Regina Collins. We will make a note of that and then go take a look at that, and maybe we can find out what the plans are for that building.
Mike Foley asks, how can the city of Toledo budget for required maintenance if you still do not have an anticipated cost of maintenance? How do you know that they will be able to afford the cost before you start the project?
Well, this is Regina Collins again. What we do is we anticipate a maintenance budget for the year for all of our green infrastructure projects. If we need more money, we have other pools of money that we can hold from if need be. And keep in mind, all maintenance does not have to be done necessarily at once or within a year. Our original goal, or our goal, is to look at each site and have a 5-year plan for that site post-grant. And so maybe in year 1, maybe we would have to manage invasives. Maybe in year 2, we may have to, add some more plants. Maybe in year 3, we may have to do something else. So we try to look at it as long-term maintenance, because we can't, you don't do everything to the site in a particular, in every year. So yes, it is hard for us to budget for this. Some of it is based on knowledge of other sites. Some of it is just, what we have to anticipate. And if our budget runs short in year 1, maybe we'll know we have to move something else to year 2 and budget for it. And that's the way we've been approaching it thus far.
And we often have construction contractors ensure that maintenance is completed for the first 2 years, as far as like replacing plantings and things like that. So that gives us a little bit more time to try to anticipate the cost and then budget accordingly. But yes, we have similar sites that we also look at.
Okay, and Sanger Library asks, mentions there are 2 different courses, Retiree and Detwiler are separated by Summit Street. So they're clarifying the 2 separate golf courses, but neither is affected by this project.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I got that confused. Apologies. So this is not directly next to the retiree golf course, but will not affect the retiree golf course either.
All very good questions. Thank you, folks. We still have time for more Q&A. Again, please feel free to put questions in the chat, or if you're not able to do that, to unmute yourself and put a question to the group that way. I'm going to scroll through and make sure I did not overlook anybody else's questions inadvertently. Okay, Paul Jasek says, who would Visions of Cullen Park and the community contact about the current situation at Cullen Park pools? The unmaintained and invasive plants there for over 2 years resulted in neighbors of the park contacting City Council and Mayor's office to have something done. Will the City of Toledo group have on-staff naturalists and wildlife experts for Detwiler Marsh and other natural parks to advise on the upkeep of these special environments beyond simply grass mowing, chemical treatment, and city forestry department mowing everything down?
This is Regina Collins, and the answer to that is yes. As part of our maintenance program that we have now, that is contracted out to experts, or yeah, I would say subject experts. So that is something that has been contracted out, because it's something that we can't just maintain on our own, and it goes beyond just mowing the grass, or so it has to go with invasive management, some hand weeding, some chemical treatment, what plants need to be reestablished or replanted, maybe what plants need to be changed. Some of the pools, vernal pools, or some of the areas, if some of the soil needs to be re-amended. So all of that is taken into account in our maintenance plan that we now have. And Cullen Park is within that maintenance plan, and we are managing their invasives and taking care of the vernal pools.
So before I move on from this topic, there are some other questions that I'm going to go back to in just a second, but Paul has a follow-up question that's saying, whom do we contact and how? He also mentions that Metro Park's model of habitat management is good. So Regina, who at the city would Paul contact about the maintenance?
If Paul has questions about maintenance, he can, it was managed through environmental services. So Paul is always welcome to contact me or Shauna. And my phone is, would you like my phone and email, or you want me to put it in the chat?
Why don't you say it and also put it in the chat?
Okay. Regina Collins, and the phone is 419-936-3780. And my email is Regina, REGINA .Collins, COLLINS @toledo.oh.gov.
Thanks, Regina.
And then Shauna's information is on the screen.
Yep, and you can feel free to direct those questions to me too, and I'll make sure to try to get you as much information as we can.
Okay, continued thanks to everyone for your questions. I'm going to go back and pick up a few that I went past to get that follow-on question. Sanger Library says, thank you. When is the next Zoom meeting?
We don't have that scheduled right now. We're going to be scheduling it during construction. So probably won't be for a little while, but we'll be sure to try to get the word out as much as possible.
And we would use the same channels of putting the word out as we did this time.
Yes.
Mike Foley says, second on Paul's question about Cullen Park restoration of invasive species. So I believe that's been addressed. Andrew Sankowski says, bit of divergence here, but it was mentioned that Mud Creek flows have been decreasing. Did any theories as to the reason come up during the planning or design of this project? Precipitation generally hasn't been decreasing, so it would seem to be a land use / drainage change.
Yeah, I don't have any direct data for you. It's just based on observation that I have. But I think what you're getting at is probably close to the truth. Again, I don't have any data to point to, but I do think that maybe some land use change, and then potentially even it seems like there's maybe even a lot more Phragmites along Mud Creek now that could potentially be changing some of the hydrology of the creek as well.
And then Joyce Edginger said, so to answer Paul's question, who does Cullen Park call? I believe that question was typed before Regina gave her call-in number. But Regina, if you wouldn't mind typing that into the chat, please, to make sure it's there for folks if they want to copy it. So Regina's going to put her phone number in again and her email address. And then Shauna's is on the screen.